Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Dojo Live. Round two today. We just had the recap a couple of hours ago, and today we have a new guest, and we're excited to speak with him. It is Tuesday, January 1st, 2021. I'm Tulio Siragusa, broadcasting from Southern California, joined by Kim Lantis in Hermosillo, Mexico,
Hey,
and
it's not
Carlos.
January, it's June.
Did I say January? Oh my gosh, it's June 1st. And Carlos Ponce in Cuernavaca, Mexico. We
Yes.
should do
We
like
all
one
want
of those.
2021 to be over just like we wanted 2020.
We should do one of those burn reels and on each other, and mine would just be a bunch of botched up dates and names. So anyway, welcome to the show, Uri. We have Uri Maoz, who's the Chief Revenue Officer at AppSolver. Welcome to the show. Looks like you're in the office there in Palo Alto. Congratulations. Must be nice to be back in the offices. We can look forward to that soon for everyone. So today we're talking about data. I mean, data is a big deal. I mean, the impact it has is widespread. I read a statistic that here in the U.S. alone, poor use of data impacts our economy in a negative fashion by $3.1 trillion. Huge impact. And yet some companies who make good use of data save billions of dollars by being more effective on how they run their business. So we're going to talk to Uri about how to make data more accessible to everyone. But before we do, let's get to know him a little bit. Let's get to know you, Uri, a little bit, and then let's talk about your company, AppSolver. But first, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Welcome to the show.
Sure. Thank you for having me. So my name is Uri Maoz. I'm based in the Bay Area in California. And I am these days the Chief Revenue Officer for AppSolver, which means that I manage everything related to the customer experience, from pre-sales to sales to business development and customer success. And I said I am in the business today, but my background is actually in engineering. I started my career as an engineer, then moved to be an engineering manager in a company named Mercury, where I was leading engineering teams for a product in the application performance management space. Then at some point of time, moved to do product management for various products. And then decided a few years ago to cross the line and move to the dark side of sales and business development. So
That's what I always call it, the dark side.
The dark side.
Yeah, the dark side. And
I'm a very new member to this dark side.
Well, if you came from engineering, like I get it, right? You came from engineering or technical role, and then you went on to sales or customer success. It kind of feels like you went to the dark side. There's always a little conflict, right? It's nonsense, but this just feels like that.
And there's also engineers, Java engineers who would call .NET engineers the ones on the dark side, for example. I've heard that too.
Really? That's well.
Yeah.
Anyway, Uri
moved to the dark side, and they actually joined a startup in the seed stage called Anodot, a company in the machine learning space, and was the first employee in the US, founded the US business for the company, running the sales and the entire activity in the US, and we got into very nice results, growing the business, bringing quite a lot of customers, so it was a really fun journey. And around 2 years ago, I decided to leave Anodot and join the AppSolver, a company in the data lake space. We will talk later about what AppSolver does, but I saw the challenge that the company has in the data space and preparing data for analytics. So once I ran into AppSolver, it seems like a very promising company and product. And as mentioned today in AppSolver, I'm running the business and having a lot of fun doing it in the dark side.
Great. Okay. So tell us about AppSolver. What is the company doing? What's the give us the elevator pitch. What is it about?
I will. So AppSolver is in the data lake space. Basically, companies today are moving a lot of data to data lakes. We can talk later about what are data lakes. But we see a lot of companies moving a lot of data to the data lakes, and then they need to have a very good way to take the data, huge amounts of data that is stored on the data lake, and prepare it to analytics. And companies today are doing that using a lot of engineers, writing a lot of codes, managing months and months of work in preparing the data to analytics versus gaining value from the data. And this is the challenge that AppSolver come to solve. So AppSolver delivers a platform, a no-code data lake engineering platform that enable every data practitioner in the company to access data, to ingest the data to the data lake, and then using only SQL or base control panel or user interface, prepare the data to analytics and choose it to analytics a house of your choice. So really shortening the time to value to implementation of data lakes and removing barriers in getting value from data that is stored on the data lake.
All right. Well, we look forward to the conversation. I'm thinking data lake, cloud, the clouds eventually rain, the rain feels the lake, right? So let's go right into the topic today. Please, Kim, will you please introduce the topic? Let's go right into it.
I sure will. Today's
Where were you, Tulio? Where were you, Tulio? Please.
it's actually Carlos who was prepared.
Carlos! As I was doing it, I was like, I think I was supposed to tell Carlos.
Back to light today, Uri. First question is why? Why did you choose today's topic?
So I chose today's topic because we do see, like I mentioned, a lot of companies that are moving data to the data lake. We see companies that are trying to gain value from the data lake, but running into a lot of challenges, wasting a lot of effort in implementing the data lake. And we want to discuss how companies can be much more efficient and get a much better value from their data.
Yeah, so you already alluded to this earlier in today's show, data lake. I have to admit that when I was kind of preparing for today's show, I actually thought, like, is that a typo? And I had to Google, like, data lake, is that supposed to be there?
Yeah.
So what is, and I'm like, oh, it is a thing. It's not a typo. What is a data lake?
Okay, so data lake, let's give kind of the definition and then explain in more detail. So data lake basically is a centralized repository where you push all your raw data in a store first, analyze later approach. Okay, so if you think about the data lake and kind of if you're familiar with the cloud, AWS has S3, Azure has blob storage, and basically it's an area where you can push all your raw data, store the data first in its raw format. It can be structured data, semi-structured data, or unstructured data. And then from this place, now prepare the data to analytics on top of the data lake. Okay. So really the approach, if we are kind of equivalent to data warehouse or databases, the approach of database is, which we all know, is keep your data in a relational model. The data is ready to analytics. And you need to think a lot before you are pushing the data to the data warehouse or the database. How do you want to store the data? Data lake enable you to push all the data and then think later what to do. And there are advantages to that we can talk about.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, technical background is not my forte, not even close. But the visualization I'm getting right now is like from the movie Inside Out. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Yeah. And there's this point where like they throw all the memories into like this pit and they just eventually go away, right? And so I'm thinking like data lake, it sounds an awful like a place where data goes to die. But how do you prevent that? Which I think leads us to that next part of today's tagline, which is widespread adoption, right? So how can we as companies make use of this huge, cavern that we have filled with data so that it's not dying, but actually becoming useful?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and we run into a lot of companies. Like companies can be in different maturity stages. So we run into companies that they just want to start implementing data lake and push data to the data lake. We run into companies that try to implement something and fail, and we run into companies that just say we just collect all this data, but we don't have any good way to access this data, so it just sit there and, like you say, die there. So the way to do that in the right way, and this is what AppSolver, by the way, come to help, is to really give a good way to prepare the data to analytics. So again, I want to explain about the data lake. So the data lake, think of it of an area now you push all your raw data, and think about advertisement companies that has clickstream data, or IoT companies that has data coming from a lot of devices. And now you push all this data. And the next step is to now prepare the data to analytics. So all your raw data is flowing, but now you want to take the data and curate it, enrich it, and push it to an area where you will actually be able to query the data. And the ability to do that without kind of letting the data die there is to make it easy enough so every data practitioner will have access to this data and will be able to prepare it to analytics, versus the situation that we see today in the market where only big data engineers can do that.
So in order for some, go ahead, Carlos.
Yeah. Uri. Yeah, Uri, as I was listening to you, well, I have, and just like Kim said, we're not engineers. I'm not an engineer, but so that's why, hence my question. I have an understanding of what you mean, the way that data functions and the way what a data lake is. However, I'd like to ask you from the layman's perspective, who would you say that, what is the practical application of data lakes? And who's for example, who's your client? Who's your customer? Who's AppSolver's customer? What is your vertical, your space?
So AppSolver is a platform company. So we are working with various verticals. We have companies in the ad tech space, in the digital advertisement, that they have a lot of advertisement data that it can be petabytes of data that they want to be able to push this data to the data lake and analyze it in real time, and understanding like click conversion, understanding which campaigns are more effective. And in order to do that, you need to have access to the raw data, and you need to have quick access to that. It can be IoT companies that has a lot of data coming from the sensors, and they want to understand if there is now a problem with one of the sensors, but they are think about a device that is pushing measurement every 10 seconds, and think about the amount of data that you will get and need to analyze. And it can be also gaming companies that want to understand user behavior. So think about companies that has a lot of high volume of data, and they want to be able to analyze this data in near real time and take decisions based on this data.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay,
so
gotcha.
it's predominantly large enterprises, right? Many of these companies started out with needing to move data to the cloud because the massive amounts of networking needed to have access to the information just made it impossible. The information would actually drop off. So now with these lakes, you can collect this information and then work it later. So it's not necessarily something you need to access real time. You got a lot of ingestion tools. You can just dump it there and then they can analyze it and work with it. So what role does AppSolver play in this capacity? Are you like the actual analytics tool that goes in and takes the information and synthesizes it and comes out with results? Or are you more of an ingestion tool and then there's analytics that they use to be more effective? Can you give us a little bit of a better picture on the role of the company in this scheme?
Sure. So I need to give a bit background on few different players, and then I will explain the role of AppSolver. By the way, what I mentioned about the companies, it's not necessarily big enterprise. An interesting trend that you see in the market today is that not necessarily the big enterprise will have the huge amount of data. We have some small customers that might ingest a huge amount of data because they are cloud native companies. So we are looking on customers are digital native customers that actually is a good fit for AppSolver. Now, let me explain the end-to-end flow so it will be clear how it works. So again, think about a scenario where you have a lot of sensor data coming from sensors, company in the IoT space, And if in the past they were pushing all of this data to some database, so in the past they were pushing this data to a database and then analyzing everything in the database. But now the amount of data is too high. Pushing all the data to the database is not feasible. So then came the data lake and said, just push all the data, all the raw data to the data lake. It will be kind of a staging area. And now take this data and push it now to a data warehouse or to a database. But after you already curated the data, enriched it, maybe you did some aggregation, and eventually you will push the data to the data warehouse, where in the data warehouse it will be already structured, it will be organized in tables, and now you can have someone come and actually run analytics on top of the data by doing maybe using SQL to understand what you have there, or building some dashboard on top of that. So the flow that we see is the ingestion to data lake, and then from the data lake, pushing the data to a structured format. So is this flow clear first?
Yeah, so let's break it down to something as like the oil business, right? They have sensors on the rigs that are tracking vibration, could be earthquake data or weather data. So they're dumping that information constantly. Then they're also tracking weather patterns, other scenario, other things going on, which could determine if something is about to break down.
Yes,
be catastrophic. So all that's being dumped into the data lake, and then obviously you have to put two and two together to figure out some connection points, some context behind the data to make some intelligent decision, i.e. something's about to break, we should go take care of that. So AppSolver curates all the information from the data lake so that it's become digestible on the database to make decisions on it. Is that am I oversimplifying it, or is that basically what it's doing?
No, it's a good approach. It's a good way to describe that. So think about that you have all this flow of data and you want to curate the data, or you want to enrich it. Maybe you need to join between two different data streams. Maybe you need to clean the data because date format is wrong or something else is wrong. So AppSolver will be the middle layer, which will take all the data in near real time, will curate the data, will enrich it, will join the data, will prepare the data to analytics and push it to the endpoint where you can actually query the data. And all of that work, which today is being done with a lot of big data engineers, writing a lot of code, trying to optimize a lot of stuff in the underlying infrastructure, all of that stuff is being automated by AppSolver. Plus, instead of writing code, we give a user interface, which is based on SQL, where you have a lot of people in the organization that know SQL, but they don't know how to code. And now they have access to this data, and they can actually create this end-to-end flow. So AppSolver role is to be in the middle layer that will take the data, will optimize it to analytics over the data lake, and make it accessible to many more people in the organization versus the unicorn hire that you have today that are big data engineers that are very, very hard to hire.
The rebirth of the middleware sounds like remember the middleware with the mainframes, and it sounds like the rebirth of the middleware for the big data. Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, my question is, are there any naysayers to this approach? From what I'm understanding, this idea is, let's collect it all. Because right now, we don't know what's going to be useful data and what's not going to be useful data, whatever reason down the road. So what I'm hearing is we have this ability to just hoard everything. And then later, when we decide what we want and what we don't want, we can do that. Are there any naysayers? Like, would you say the obvious advantages or disadvantages to collecting so much data? Like, are there privacy concerns? Is it just where do we, physically house all of this? Is there like environmental reasons of servers and whatever else? Like, what would the naysayers have to say to this type of approach?
So first I will say that the ability to collect all the data, part of it, and this is one thing that I didn't say about the data lake, that it's very cost effective. Because if in the past you would say, let's collect all the data and push it to the database, then you run into a challenge of cost, because now it's very, very expensive to store all this data. But then came the cloud data lake. And the cloud data lake is basically S3 in AWS, Azure Blob Storage in Azure, and GCP also has their stuff. and it's very, very cost effective to store the data. So in terms of cost, this is what enabled people to collect all this data. Now, the fact that you collect all the data doesn't mean that you need to keep all the data. So there are ways to define retention policy where you are saying, okay, I will not save this data. And there are ways to kind of decide which data will be retention and which data will not. So I would say there are no disadvantages in collecting the data if you are actually doing the flow of taking the data that you want and push it till the end. And this is where AppSolver helps to kind of focus and prepare to analytics the data that is relevant.
All right, massive amounts of data without analytics is just that, massive amounts of data. But to get to analyze data, you have to first normalize it. And to normalize it, you need to curate it, connect all the moving pieces, and that's really what you guys do. Carlos, I think you had a question coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tulio. We're approaching the final segment of today's conversation, and I wouldn't want to miss asking the following. My question is more about the company itself in terms of culture. And let me tell you why, because we might have viewers out there who could be watching the show right now who could eventually, maybe, let's say, might want to come work for you or might have an interest in the company as a professional opportunity. What would you say to these people what would you tell them that makes AppSolver a great company to work for? What is the culture like? What are you look for in your teammates, in whoever's going to be part of your team? What do you look for in them?
Yeah, so we actually define a set of core values to the company that we all really resonate with, and we thought a lot about them. And we're really we're really proud on the product that we developed. The product AppSolver gives a tremendous value to customer. We have customers that eventually we shorten time to value. So companies that was planning a project of 1 year will be able to move to production in 2 weeks, let's say. So really tremendous improvement in time to value. So we're really looking for people that are really motivated. We have a core value of treat the company like it your own. Okay, we are really kind of pushing everyone to have what I call internal motivation and really care about the company and the success. So this is one thing. Very open culture. One of our core values is disagree and commit. So basically saying, it doesn't matter if I'm the CEO or I'm the CRO, I expect everyone to say their opinion, disagree, and we'll have a discussion about that, and eventually everyone will commit to the decision. So again, really open, pushing forward, care about customer and customer value. These are the things that we kind of set as the core of the core values of the company.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Uri. Okay,
excellent.
Kim?
I think Kim might be frozen. I'm not sure. So anyway, we'll wait for Kim. So this is obviously a very crowded space. There's a lot of players in the big data space and the analytics space, and who do a number of things. And there's different arguments about what the effectiveness of a data lake versus ingesting information real time, and all various ingestion tools. There's so much to it, right? You need like a PhD just to decipher which tools to use. So how do you guys go? One of your promises is to make this easier for data practitioners, but how do you go about helping companies make the decision of what to do easier? Like, what's the process been like for you guys to educate of, one, the need for this? Why should they do it this way versus a myriad of other ways that are being presented in the marketplace? What's the key thing that helps you guys get through that challenge with companies that are, in essence, some cases, just confused? There's too much to decide upon. How do you guys help them make that decision?
It's a good point, and it's a very crowded market. A lot of players. If you will get now enter to 10 different companies, you will kind of feel that they are saying the same things. So yeah, there are different players in the market. There are players like data warehouse, like Snowflake and Redshift and BigQuery. There are products that are focused more on ingestion of collecting data from a lot of different sources. There are products that are optimizing the data lake experience. And basically, what we are trying to do, first of all, we are writing a lot of content. This market is a lot around the content of writing a lot of stuff that companies and people will find value. A lot of technical content about challenges in we see in data lakes and in the market. So this is one thing that we are doing. Second, is to listen to the customer. We are really not in the business of selling a customer something that it doesn't need. Some customers will not be a good fit for AppSolver. So listen to the customer, understanding his challenges. We start every call with a discovery, understanding the customer challenges, and then explain about AppSolver and see if AppSolver can be part of the data architecture. So this is another thing, and the third is eventually in this market, all the customers want to try the product. They want to put their hands on the product. They want to understand how easy it is to use the product. So we are first of all offering free trial of the product, and lately we also had the freemium version that is free forever for a limited scale, and enable people to just try it and see how easy it is, and from there go and continue to use the product and scale while they scale the company.
That's a bold move. Well, congratulations. We're up on time. It's always great to hear from companies that are innovating and trying to make everybody's life a little easier, right? And be more effective with how they use data. It's pretty amazing. The impact it has on organizations. I learned recently Netflix saves $1 billion a year just because they make really good use of their data on customer retention efforts. So that's a lot of money. So you can have all the data in the world, but if you can't curate it and you can't make it useful, it's useless. So congratulations. We have to stay in touch with you, keep tabs on your progress. You guys have any questions left over for Uri before we announce what's coming up for the rest of the week?
I have just one.
Go
I
ahead.
do. You mentioned Netflix as Tulio's kind of a use case. Uri, a success story, like as much as NDAs will allow. Can you share an example of how a client of yours has had great success with AppSolver?
Yeah, sure. And again, we have great customers. We are really proud of the value that we give to the customer. I will mention example, a big company in the advertisement space that had petabytes of data that they needed to ingest in real time, streaming data and take decision based on this data for advertisement data. And they had a plan to move to production that was around 1 year of development. And with AppSolver, they were able to move to production in 4 weeks with very low latency. It's important to mention that it's not data that you just store and let's analyze later. It's about taking decisions in minutes time frame. So this is a very successful story. Other story, and we'll finish with that, is about companies. You mentioned the cost. If you don't manage your environment and data environment in the right way, you can lose a lot of money and spend a lot of money. And not talking about the development time that we save, but we have companies that were pushing all their data to data warehouse, paying very, very high cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars every month to the data warehouse. And by moving to a data lake architecture and storing the data there in a cost-effective approach, and then push into the data warehouse only the data that they need, they were able to save hundreds of thousands of dollars by the usage of AppSolver.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us today. It's been great to have you with us. Carlos, what do we got coming up for the rest of the week? I think we have 2 more shows, both tomorrow, I think, right?
That is correct, Tulio. Tomorrow, we have 2 shows, one at 10 a.m. Pacific and the other one at 12 noon Pacific. And the one at 10 is going to be with Ty Beard and Megan Conan from ASTM. That's the name of the company. And the topic is going to be strategies to make your training program pandemic proof. So I look forward to that. And also, the one at 12 noon is going to be with Sherry Shang, the CEO of GenoPalette. The topic will be Healthy 4.0, how to personalize your nutrition. So those are the two shows that we have coming up tomorrow, right here on Dojo Live, 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. noon. Join us and be here.
See you soon.
See you soon. Thank you, everyone.